All right, welcome into the latest episode of Floor is Yours, an extension of the Five on the Floor podcast. You can find everything at 5reasonsports.com. Spell it out, F-I-V-E, reasonsports.com. Also follow the Twitter, as our guy Manny Chang is producing tonight. Put up there at 5 on the Floor 5. So first spell it out, then the number, and of course at 5, the number, Reason Sports. We're going to take your questions tonight, as we always do. One question that you probably didn't have, but we're going to answer for you anyway, is Five on the Floor is now going to 5 days a week, starting up next week. One of those will probably be an episode of Floor is Yours, but we're definitely going to be providing more content on the website, everywhere else. Our guy Brady Hawk's been writing for the web, so make sure to check that out. And I'm expecting something from Nikias Duncan here next week. He was our guest on Floor is Yours last week. No Alphonse Sidney tonight. I'm not really sure where he is, but that's okay. We have filled the role here. Someone else wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt. Greg Sylvander. Up in the top left, you know him as Lefty Leif, or used to before I had him change his handle. Although still wearing the Heat hat. Alex Toledo, who was on the Duncan Robinson conference call with me today, you can follow him at Tropical Blanket. He's also wearing a Heat shirt. You're wearing a Heat shirt. It's okay.
Maybe.
Is that Alf? Oh, there he is. Oh my God. Alf wins the Alex Toledo Award by being here a minute and 20 seconds late tonight. Alf, that's $5 in the pool. I'm wearing a 5 Reason shirt that you cannot get on our website. All the others.
It's very on brand. Very on brand.
Very on. Everybody's on brand. We got 2 Black Lives Matter and a Heat and a 5 Reasons. Alf, we have not prepped you on tonight, so you can just go off the cuff here. We've got 5 topics. We're going to mix in.
That's what I would have done anyway. I don't care about.
I'm aware of that. By the way, I got a couple of comments. You and I did that really good pod with Leif on the 5 teams, the 5 most interesting or memorable teams in Miami Heat history. It was mentioned to me a couple of times that Alf was much more coherent in the first 35 minutes than he was in the last 20. And so
I don't remember any of that pod, by the way. So.
Those are the best ones.
Well, I feel like I got off kind of unscathed because you not remembering a pod and yet me not getting sued. Good. Okay. It's fine.
Listen, it's no a win-win.
No
that's the direction that we were heading. All right, let's get to 5 topics tonight. The very first one, Eric Spoelstra was on a conference call yesterday, along with separately from Goran Dragic, but I was on these calls. And my big takeaway from Eric Spoelstra is he looks giddy again. Like, he just looks excited about basketball being back, but also about his group. And sometimes when I talk, I feel like I'm channeling Spo, and then Spo repeats things that I've sort of been saying on the podcast or other platforms. But everything we've talked about, he talked about yesterday.
You think Spo was stealing your takes?
It's fine with me if he does. I mean, people around him follow me. He claims he doesn't.
Bold statement.
But that's all right. I'm not gonna. My guy Shandell calls me Coach Sco. I don't like that. But it's mocking, by the way. It's not a sign of endearment or respect. But basically, everything we've talked about: depth, that this team has, health that this team has. Myers Leonard, Tyler Hero being totally healthy now. Organizational culture, leadership with Jimmy Butler. Like this, Alex, when we've talked about these things, is basically like the list of things we've ticked off that we like the Heat for. He talked about liking the Heat for. What did you take away from Spo yesterday? And I mean, I'm feeling pretty optimistic. I'm feeling more optimistic about this group, much more optimistic than I did when the season sort of ended. And even he said we were trending the wrong direction. Now I feel like they're not.
Yeah, I think honestly, it's like more of the same, right? It goes back to kind of the way that he was when the season was going, and they were just, playing way above expectations. And I think he kind of knew that they were going to go in that direction before the season. And I think it's like he's kind of like he knows something. And I think he's kind of almost letting on to that a little bit again. He's kind of had time to get his team back healthy. He's had time to go through, I'm sure, a bunch of different things he can do with lineups, with schemes, all types of things. I'm sure he's ready to actually go out and test, the things that he's been working on. And I just think that, all of this is going to end up helping the Heat on the court. Other than them not being able to play at home anymore, which is a huge loss for them because of how good they were at home. I think this is going to help them overall for sure.
No, they got the vice floor. They do have the vice.
They do have the vice floor. But
why don't they just move that to the court when they're playing the games? Though, why only for practice? Like they're there already, right? Like you got them there.
Help Alex pay his light bill. I mean, Alf. Alex hit on what may be the biggest negative for them coming in, which is that they don't get to play at home, but they also don't have to play on the road. It works both ways.
Valid point.
No, the most important thing is they don't have to play a lot of bad teams. That's the most important thing.
And they played up all year. So
they played up all year. All they're doing is playing really good teams in neutral environments. And honestly, I feel like that's advantageous for Spo. When you look at the Heat and the last few years, they're bad against bad teams. They're bad on the road. Sometimes they're bad at home against bad teams. Like a neutral environment against really good teams is probably the best case scenario for the Heat right now, and fully healthy. So I don't think I'm as high on them as I think Ethan is, but I am excited about what they can do in this limited format. I feel like they're kind of built for this. I feel like Spo was like, we're going out there with 17 guys. It's almost like he's bragging to other teams, like, yeah, our guys are fully invested. Yeah, I got all mine. Where's your guys at?
That's right. You got Roto, we got culture. Like, yeah.
Yeah, my guys are afraid to stay at home because our culture is very, so stringent. And they don't want Jimmy to kick their ass. Like,
or are you D?
Yeah,
either of them.
Yeah, they're afraid. Listen, these guys are probably afraid of their own locker room, so they're going to show up. So, I think Spo's confident because he has every right to be confident. If you're Brett Brown, do you feel confident after not talking to Embiid and Simmons for 3 months?
You didn't have talked at all.
I don't think you talked to Embiid and Simmons the previous 3 months.
Honestly, if he has spoken to them, if he's spoken to them twice, I'll be surprised. I will bet you American money that he has not spoken to either of those guys more than twice.
I'll take that bet, honestly.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how Spo balances having a full roster, though, because that's like a thing. He essentially has to find a rotation in 10 games or so, and that's not an easy task when you're, as he said today, 3 deep, or was it yesterday? He said that he can go 3 deep at every position. So I think that's going to be particularly interesting to watch.
Yeah, 3 deep at every position when they still don't have a point guard. It was kind of funny when he said that yesterday. But honestly, he's right. I mean, Jimmy, in terms of depth, yeah.
That's kind of important what Leif is saying right there, because now that they're healthy, I believe they've got an 11-man rotation, not including Solomon Hill, not including Chris Silva. So this team is really deep, man. Like, I think we haven't really hit on that so much. Well, I mean, they've got a lot of guys. I mean, they've got a. How do you fit in? Who are you cutting out at this point, right? That's something that I feel like we haven't really talked about. Who's going to be number 11?
I think it was going to be DJJ anyway, potentially, and I think this may sort of lock in that it's DJJ. Again, I think it depends how Andre comes back, but Eric said that we had a pretty stable rotation. That was true to a point, and then everybody got hurt and they made the trade. So they didn't really have a stable rotation. They had a stable starting lineup when they were back. But even he said we had a stable rotation. He said this yesterday. We had a stable rotation, but now we didn't have Myers and Tyler. So now it's working those guys back in, and we've talked about the different permutations of it. I just think his brain has been working for the last 3 months. I've said this repeatedly. I don't think they're going to look like they looked like when they left season. I think he's looked at the numbers. He's realized some matchups that don't work. Some pairings that don't work, and I think that they're going to look a little different. Let's get to number 2. Duncan Robinson today. Alex and I were on the call. We put some of that on our YouTube channel. Also, Brady wrote a story about it for the website. Duncan said that he's been watching – basically, he has spent the break watching catch-and-shoot guys like Ray Allen and Klay Thompson to get more creative off the ball.
I mean, that's scary. Oh, my God.
I thought he was pretty good at that to begin with.
Talk about taking a leap.
Well, I mean, that's a question we're going to get to next, is who are we most intrigued about in this environment? But he's certainly one of those guys. Do you think, Leif, that we're going to see teams overplay him now? Like, you've had 3 months to look at the tape of the Heat. There was a period of time. I mean, Duncan sort of accelerated his attempts very quickly. Do you think that we're going to see teams try to sort of, make sure that they get out to him and open things up for somebody else?
Absolutely. They're going to be all over him. And initially, I think it's going to be an adjustment period for him to figure out how teams load up on his side, or if they're just not even leaving him whatsoever. So that's going to be a huge adjustment period, because now you're right. Every team has had the chance to do their homework. But this is where having a completely rested and healthy Jimmy Butler that can create and having, Goran Dragic maybe takes more of an elevated role with the starting lineup. Those things I think can help, drag guys off of Duncan Robinson so that they're not in a situation where he's just smothered all the time. But, I mean, getting off the ball would also be another way of doing that.
Yeah. What do we think, Alf?
You said Al and then it cut off.
No.
I didn't know if you said Alf or Alex.
I said we've talked about you. With Duncan and I, we've talked about Duncan a lot on the podcast. I feel like listening to Duncan today, it's like he's sort of there was a little bit not flukiness to his season, but I don't even think he sort of realized what was happening at the time, and now you have 3 months to process it. That he's going to be on everybody's scouting report from now on. Well,
listen, man. Like Duncan gets to prove if he's real or not. First of all, I just want to shout out Kevin Heat NBA for telling me it was too dark in here. I thought it was a suggestion about my skin tone, but he was just right. Like I didn't have enough light. But legit, like Duncan Robinson, he's going to prove if he's real or not, right? Because the playoffs is when you prove that the regular season wasn't a fluke. Right now, a lot of people are looking at Duncan Robinson like a huge fluke. Like, there's a lot of casual NBA fans, when you say Duncan Robinson, they think you're making up a name. Like, he sounds like a creative player in NBA 2K. Like, they took Tim Duncan and David Robinson and made a player out of him. Like, a lot of people don't know who he is, don't know what he's about. This is going to – if he can come out and if he can shoot the way he shot in the regular season, he doesn't even have to shoot to the same level, but if he does some of these 6, 7, 8 3-point games in the playoffs, like he becomes a different player. Like it is not – it's a totally different thing than to do – like he's done it a lot in the regular season, right? It is a different thing under the pressure and the lights of the playoffs to have an 8 3-point game. Like that is wild, right? And he does it multiple times. He does it all the time. If he could do that in the playoffs, he becomes he transcends what he is as a second-year undrafted player into almost not an elite player, but like a guy that, they're already scouting against him, but he becomes like a go-to type of guy. Like this playoffs could mean so much for Duncan Robinson, for himself and for his entire career. So to me,
especially because there's like no crowd pressure, so it's like that whole element is huge.
He mentioned that on the call, by the way.
He mentioned that on the call, yeah. He said,
it's weird. It's weird for them, right?
But it's not weird for him. And this is something, Alex, you brought up. And let's get to number 3 then. So let's get to the third topic because this kind of plays into it, which is that Alex, you've been talking on the pod about how some of these guys have been in these kind of environments before, and he said it flat out. He said, look, I played before a lot of empty arenas in the G League. I mean, he was at Michigan, but he played in the G League.
Williams.
He played a year at Williams College. I covered a game at Williams College because I covered Johns Hopkins University Blue Jays.
Wow.
My 2 suite mates were the center and power forward. They were 6'2" and 6 foot.
Ethan covered the 60s Celtics.
I covered the 60s Celtics, except they weren't quite as good. Sorry, Schatzel. Sorry, Grizzwack. Sorry, Rote. I actually
where are those names?
Those are names. Last name, they're white guys. I went up to
you think?
Really?
No, we had the only black guy on the team was Wes Unseld's son. Wes Unseld III. That was the one. We had one guy.
Were you covering Adolph Rupp?
No. Hopkins was a little different back then. I don't know. But anyway, so I went up to Williams College, and I can tell you if there were, 1,500 people there, that was a lot. And so that's the kind of environment he played in that first year. But let's get to number 3 here. If it's Duncan, is it Hero, is it Nunn? Who are we most intrigued to see in this particular environment? Start with you, Alex.
Honestly, I'm going to stick with what we've been talking about. And that's also because I wanted to keep on raving about Duncan. I think Duncan is the most intriguing. I think it's true, though. Like, they rely on him so damn much. It's like I was saying that about Wayne Ellington when he was here. Like, they were relying on Wayne Ellington a lot. But this is a whole other level. Like, this is like Wayne Ellington, but 6'8" and just like double the usage. Like, the guy was shooting 10 3-pointers a game for like the second half of the season and shooting the 50%. I think Christian Hernandez ended up tweeting that on volume he has the highest true shooting percentage, and like all the seasons after that are just a bunch of Steph Curry seasons. And I mean, I think everything is going to revolve around him as far as because their bread and butter is offense, and I think it's about how good he's shooting. And if he isn't having, I think he's going to have multiple of those like high shooting, 5, 6, 7 threes games. Maybe he doesn't have them at the same rate, but I still think he's going to have enough that like that type of thing wins games by itself. Just having a guy that can do that so many times. And at the end of the day, if they start throwing 2 at him, that's just going to free up other guys. And honestly, that's might be just as important because you need the other guys to be able to shoot, and you can't, they can't afford shooting slumps from the other guys because that's kind of like what the Bucks do on defense. They'll let Kelly Olynyk shoot, or they'll let maybe Kendrick Nunn shoot, but they're gonna, really, really stick Duncan Robinson. So I think that's gonna be important.
Leif, who's your most intriguing?
So my heart says I want to go Jimmy because I feel like he can go Timberwolves practice on this kind of environment. But my head tells me that I should say Bam, and that's because if there was ever a lightning rod for other superstars in the league to notice the heat and want to come and play in Miami, I think it's seeing Bam take that playoff leap. So that would probably be the most.
Well, Leif, that's a good
option.
comment from Money X Tears just came in and said he could see that Bam feeling confident in sort of this open environment.
Yep.
To open up his offensive versatility, he doesn't have to worry about kind of everybody watching him, even though everybody really will be watching him. That's a good one. Before I go to Alf, I'm going with the easy one here. To me, it is Jimmy, and I think it's because when you strip everything raw like this, and it's just basketball, like that is his. This is like heaven for him. This is
porn.
It's all he wants, right? It's all he wants.
It's Jimmy's version of porn.
Basically, I mean, he's not going to let his guys he's not going to let them breathe, okay? And then he's going to be in this environment talking trash that you can hear, which is going to be fascinating. And it's just like, as I was told during the season by people close to him, they said, wait, playoff Jimmy's different because you let him dig into the same team for a long period of time. And here, he's got a chance to dig into this team with nothing else to do in his bubble. And he's going to force his guys to dig into him too. I think we're going to see a totally different level, and that doesn't even include the physical stuff. The fact that his legs are got to be under him now. There's no back-to-backs other than the one against Boston.
Sucks for TJ Warren.
It does. I think this is it also sucked that ESPN used my tweet and pulled my tweet out of it, but that's a whole nother story. Blame it on copyright violations.
Ethan.
Yes.
I have a question for you since you're talking about Jimmy Butler. Do you think this is something that we talked about before, and we talked about pre-show because Zach Lowe mentioned it when he was talking about the Heat, and I think now is a good time to bring it up again. Jimmy Butler's free throws, him and Harden were literally kind of like going back and forth for highest free throw rate all season. It's along with Duncan Robinson threes, Jimmy going to the line is one of the other important things for him. How much of that do you think he can keep percentage-wise, if you had to guess, going into this playoffs and in this weird environment? Do you think that helps or hurts the free throw thing? I mean, I tend to agree that it's going to help him in the other aspects of his game, but what do you think about just the free throw part?
I mean, I don't know how they're going to call these games. Because one of the great unknowns here, because officials are affected by the environment. It is the reason that home teams get more calls.
That's such an underrated aspect that we haven't talked about.
I don't know what that's going to look like, Alex. Like I mean, they're going to bring their best officials. I mean, their officials have to be quarantined. How many of them are testing positive?
Best officials. That's an oxymoron.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like,
if Tony Brothers shows up, then it's moot.
Well, yeah.
The point is moot.
But that's a big question. So I'm not sure. Alf, who would you have on the board?
Did I ever tell you my Tony Brothers story, by the way?
Go ahead.
So I was ripping Tony Brothers like crazy one night, adding him and I didn't know who was a real Tony Brothers. I felt like it was like a fake account that somebody made up so that people could yell at Tony Brothers. So I was like, this is years ago. I'm just tearing Tony Brothers up because he deserves it. And then the next thing I know, he's like tweeting me back like, hey, brother, I'm sorry I missed a call, blah, blah, blah. But please check out my charity supporting single mothers. And I was like,
feeling
what?
guilty, huh?
Bro, it was actually Tony Brothers. It's like his legit account. And like all he did was like, hey, I'm sorry for making the wrong call, but please support my charity supporting single mothers.
But Alf, this happens.
Did you donate?
No, I just never felt. I just went to a strip club and donated to single mothers.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Oh my!
That's
God.
exactly what he. I knew that was coming. But
problematic. I'm sorry, Alex.
Don't apologize to me.
You're problematic in every way. I always feel bad for officials though, because I would end up running into officials on the road, like just at restaurants or bars or wherever, and like I'd be like, oh my God, I just spent the entire last game ripping this one and this guy a new one. The nicest official to me ever off the court, Joey Crawford.
I knew you were going to say
that. And all I ever did was rip Joey Crawford. Joey Crawford, like, gave up his taxi for me twice. Didn't know me. Gave up his taxi to make sure that I got where I needed to go. He's like, you probably need to get to the game before I do.
Low key, Joey Crawford was a show off, but he was the best official. He was one of the best officials I've ever seen.
But he needed to cut the show off stuff. But the technical
he was very showy.
He loved and
the he was showy, and the technicals were bad. But when it came to calls, like he was like on point the whole game. Tony Brothers and what's the other guy?
Malloy.
Malloy. The
Hype
two
to
worst
call a
officials.
charge. Hype.
Yeah. Oh my God. Anyway, but who? I'm sorry, I went off on a tangent. Well, that's the reason you have me on a podcast is to go off on tangents. Most intriguing player to me because everyone else has named the guys I wanted to name. I'm going to say Kendrick Nunn. Is Kendrick Nunn for real? Kendrick Nunn will show if he's a for real player in these playoffs. Kendrick Nunn had Dwayne Wade rookie season numbers. Like, let's not forget that shit.
Yep.
Like I talk a lot of shit about Kendrick Nunn. I don't like his defense. There's a lot of things I don't like. But he had Dwayne Wade rookie season numbers. Is he going to have Dwayne Wade rookie season performance in the playoffs?
Mm-hmm.
Remember, Dwayne Wade became Dwayne Wade in that first round series against the Hornets and against the Pacers. Even that they lost the series. I'm not saying it's not a comparison. I don't think he's Dwayne Wade. No. I'm just saying, is he going to be that guy when it? I don't think he's going to be Dwayne Wade, but is he going to at least maintain these numbers when it comes to the playoffs? And that's going to be huge for the Heat because there's a lot of times when the Heat went into offensive lows. I said this on another podcast where Kendrick Nunn pulled them out with just things that he can do by himself offensively. But if he's getting cooked on the other end by Victor Oladipo, shout out to Sasha. Ethan's daughter is making a bunch of noise.
Yeah, Sasha's got her hamster on my couch right now, so I'm not sure exactly what's going on.
And she's feeling the same thing I am about Kendrick Nunn. She thinks Alf Kendrick Nunn take is laughable. And she's probably right. But they took Jimmy Duncan and Bam away from me. What else am I gonna do?
Yeah, we didn't have any other options for. All right, let's get to number 4. And I'm gonna mute my mic as I get this hamster back in its
Chris Silva's my most intriguing player.
Solomon Hill
on Twitter. Bradley Beal was traded basically on Bleacher Report for Duncan Robinson. Was it Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, and what? Leif?
Iguodala, Kelly Olynyk.
Alex got it. And
Alex
or something like that.
Alex, does that make sense?
I mean, honestly, when I looked at that, I couldn't go one way or the other on it. Like, I think, obviously, I think Pat Riley, if like the Wizards were to be like, okay, this is something that we would take, and maybe they also asked for that first round pick, like I wouldn't be surprised if Pat was like, fuck it, let's do it. And maybe they, before getting to that point, Pat like tries to, keep Duncan Robinson. I think that's what they're gonna really try to do first before trading him, and maybe they're like, hey, take Duncan out. Put Kendrick Nunn in. We'll throw in the protected first in the future or something like that, or a couple of I don't know what they have right now in the cupboard that they can trade. But I think something like that will make more sense. I will be more into that. Either way, that is a lot to give up though, because Kelly and Iguodala, those are some good rotation players. Hero and Nunn, like it's a lot.
Yeah.
And to give up another pick, I mean. It is a lot to give up for Beal, but I think that's something that would end up getting done if it was there on the table.
How funny is it that we just spent this whole time talking up Duncan Robinson and now we're trading him to Washington? In that deal in a vacuum, obviously Pat Riley would do that deal. So that's not a question. I think it's more about that you would find Pat Riley would get creative and find a way to keep one of those shooters along with, getting Beal, whether you bring in a third team, whether you take on John Wall's contract, if there's no amnesty thing that happens. There's a lot of avenues you can explore. So I feel like, yes, in a vacuum, you trade Duncan Robinson and Hero for Beal and you don't look back, but I don't think they're going to have to do that.
See, I don't think they are either, and here's why I say this. Pat has always talked about it's all about the player forcing his way here. And if it comes to this, you're going to end up in a situation where Bradley Beal is making it clear that he wants to be in Miami and maybe only one or two other teams, and it's going to limit the competition for Miami. And we just saw exactly 1 year ago, the Heat basically got Jimmy Butler for next to nothing when we thought it was going to take a lot more than that. They got him for less than they were going to get him for from Minnesota.
Yeah.
And so I just think we have to wait to see when Bradley Beal gets fed up. And I think like we're headed that way. And to me, again, I don't want to cast aspersions on who decides to play and who doesn't decide to play in this tournament. We've all agreed that every player has their own right. But if Bradley Beal makes a decision with a playoff, position at stake here, because we see what the Nets look like, right? The Nets aren't. If Bradley Beal decides he's not going to play,
then he's out of that.
He's out of that situation, right? Because this is an opportunity to make the playoffs and to show out.
I don't know, man. I think he already had the expectations that they weren't going to be in the playoffs, and maybe that's why it's like that decision maybe becomes a little bit easier because, like we talked about before, we don't know this for sure. This hasn't been reported. What I think is that they've kind of been sold him on next season with Wall rehabilitating. It's already been reported that they're going to do everything to keep Bertans because he was huge for them this season. They got some other young pieces that seem to be like they're going to be some very good rotation players coming up. And not that that's a great, sales pitch, but I think
they'll take a shot. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what they're focusing on. And right now there's just so many risks and he's been, outspoken. He was out there in the protests. I don't know where he stands on this. I saw him say that, the NBA could do stuff for social justice and that he kind of could see it both ways. But either way, I don't know. You think that would kind of be an indicator?
I mean, I don't think it's a definitive indicator, but I think it's
something to pay attention to.
It's something to pay attention to. I mean, his team has an opportunity. Look, they're not going to win a first-round series anyway, but they got an opportunity to play a first-round series. The Nets are basically don't have their top 6 players.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the Nets could easily fall into a play-in situation with Washington, with Orlando still making the playoffs. And if he's not going to be there, I think it gives you a little bit of an indication. I know he's been active on social justice. He's very active on Twitter. Obviously, look, he just signed an extension, so he's not up for a deal right now. But I do think it plays into a little bit where you can at least say, all right, here was a chance for him to show out, average 35 a game, stun everybody in the playoffs. And if he doesn't play, maybe you think about it a little more. All right, let's get to the 5th topic here. Thanks, everybody who joined tonight. You can check out 5reasonsports.com. Victor Oladipo. I want to get to this. We're going to talk a little bit. It says Garrison Matthews will be their Duncan Robinson. Maybe he was against
only against Vincent.
He was against the
Don't sleep on Gabe Vincent.
Gabe Vincent might be the Heat's Duncan Robinson.
Most improved in the G League?
Maybe. I mean, Garrison Matthews.
He won.
Gabe Vincent win that?
He did.
He won that award.
I just assume a Heat player is going to win that
the
award.
Asset manufacturers.
That's what always. Well, and Heat fans like soured on him after like one half. Like it's like okay.
That man can shoot. That's no joke.
Right.
Correct.
That man can shoot.
They soured on. All right, let's get to topic 5. We're going to talk Zion, but we'll do that another day. Oladipo. We've communicated about him a little bit on the programs as well. Apparently, he may not play in this either. If you're a Heat fan,
interesting, 2 guys, huh?
Right. Would you rather he play so that you get a chance to look at him in this kind of situation, see how healthy he is, or would you prefer not to have to see him in a first-round series potentially?
I'm not worried about that latter part. I would rather, like, if you're talking about easiest opponent, I think most of us would agree that the Pacers are probably the easiest when it comes to those top 6 teams in the East. So that part, I mean, obviously it would make them a lot easier without Oladipo. So that's great. And I would feel pretty good about, just waiting to see what Oladipo looks like next season after getting all of this rest. Like, I think I would be pretty optimistic about the way that he's going to look, right? And I think he was really confident about his jumper. I kind of think, like, I don't think it's the same Oladipo from Orlando or Oklahoma City. Like, I do believe in him, and I think he's going to get right back to that level, at like 90% of that level next season, to be honest.
Listen, we need him healthy for game 1 after summer 2021. We have to have him ready for that season, so we need to make sure he rests up.
Yes, good point.
That's what I would advise.
Yeah, I don't think Oladipo needs to prove anything to us right now, right? Like, we know who Oladipo is. Like, why him playing in these playoffs where they're going to lose in the first round is not going to tell us anything that we didn't know about Oladipo. Like,
how about this? What if there's something happens this offseason, right? There's a little disconnect between the Pacers. We haven't seen Oladipo play, or we know when he did come back, he wasn't great. He was still rusty. What about then? I think that's interesting.
Like, do you trade in all your assets and get him early? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like that's where it gets interesting, because we were all saying, okay, we could just wait for him to play next season, but what happens if that moment comes early?
I mean, if you can go after, honestly, if you can go after Oladipo and it costs you Kendrick Nunn and some other assets, like, I would do it in a heartbeat.
But you may be able to get him in 21 anyway. That's my thing. I mean, the question came in from Adrian: don't you usually wait till the second year to evaluate after an injury? You do.
You do.
And I think we saw that with Paul George. I think we're starting to see it with Gordon Hayward right before the break. That he was starting to come around. It usually is that second year.
Gordon Hayward was pretty damn good this year. I was looking at his numbers and I was surprised.
But it got much better, though. Take a look at the last 20. That Heat game was kind of his catalyst, actually. Yep. He had that incredible game against the Heat. I just think I understand that Pat's going to make the move early to secure the player, but I just think they're so well positioned that he may not have to this time.
Yep. No
he
rush.
May not have to. I just think
everything is ahead of schedule.
Yeah, you let it.
Problem is that somebody else snatches him up.
So
who? The Lakers? I mean, that's.
Are you guys okay with just waiting until next offseason, or
I am? I think you can let this team grow. I just
risky.
Again, Alf, this is a good place to close here. I mean, Alf, I feel like what you said early on in this show, which is that you feel good about this, but not quite as good as me. I feel like that's exactly what we said before the regular season. I have.
Yep, it's true.
I have a very good feeling about this, and some of it is I just have learned over 20 years to kind of read Spo. And
Ethan, you want my Heat hat?
No, you know me. I'm not. I mean, I
have PTSD.
Public enemy number 1 about the Heat about 2 years ago, but I've learned to read Spo. When Spo feels good about his group, there's a reason, and for those 2 years previous, he did not, and it was obvious. It weighed on him, and I think that this comes in from that we should wait till next season. I just think his demeanor 2 days ago, and everything I've heard inside the organization is he likes where they're at, and I feel like this break cleared everybody's mind. I think they're going to make a run, and I think if they make a run, they get much more attractive to some of these players too.
That's where I think a lot of this all hinges upon. We got to see what happens this year.
Yeah,
and if they are close and come up short, I feel like Riley's going to go all in and push all the chips to the table. But if they're a first round exit or a second round, then they don't even compete. I think he's like, well, let's just wait until 2021.
Really?
So I think a lot of it's going to be based on what happens. I mean, if they get to the Eastern Conference Finals and they're 2 games away from the finals, I can guarantee you Riley is going to be trading everyone he can to just get that one piece that's going to put them over the edge.
Well, and that's why I think they wanted the playoffs to happen so much this year, because they need the chance to take a look at these guys in a pressure atmosphere. You need to see what you have with Hero, Duncan Robinson, Nunn. So they're probably happy as anybody to have the season come back if it does.
And it still is pressurized, even without the crowds. It's still pressurized. Everybody's gonna be watching this thing, and I feel like in some ways it's gonna help their young players that the crowds aren't there. But still, it's the playoffs, and as Duncan said today, teams are going to zero in on him. They're going to try to take away what he does well, and he's going to have to adjust. And
I'm not that worried about that, to be honest. By the way,
the season also probably isn't going to happen, but that's hold on.
All right,
I was trying to be an optimist.
Not ending this on a downer. Follow Alf954 or don't. Follow Greg Sylvander.
Why would you?
Follow Tropical Blanket. We'll continue to provide coverage. The Black Lives Matter shirts are on the website, as are all of our other Heat shirts, our BAM MVP shirt, BAM VP shirts, BAM Giannis shirts. This one is not on the website, but I'll show it to you anyway. But we've got a bunch of 5 Reasons stuff. So thanks for joining us. New podcast next week. Mark Jones is going to join 5 on the Floor next week. Spend some time with us. Miami's own Mark Jones. Have a good one. I've got a hamster to find.